So you can thank my lovely wisdom teeth for this super late January wrap-up, but dang it, I am here to do it now. Hi guys, it is Sam, and I am back with my January wrap-up and February TBR. As I said in my little intro, again, I'm really sorry it's super late. I had my wisdom teeth out at the end of January, and I still had chick bun cheeks last weekend. And I didn't really want to film with my cheek out here, so I am doing it now. Better late than never. So I had a pretty successful reading month in January. I read a total of 8 books, which is, I think, the most I've read since Booktube. I might have done it one other time, but I was pretty happy with it. I am pretty satisfied I was able to get that many books read. Also, new to my wrap-ups, starting this year, is graphs and statistics. You can thank the lovely Brock from Let's Read for this, because he tweeted out this super awesome spreadsheet that keeps track of your reading for the year. All you have to do is input what books you've read by whatever genre. It has tons of things on here, and it basically will auto-populate graphs for you, so you don't have to set up the graphs. It's already set up. So it's really, really cool, and I love it. And I love statistics and figures, and I hope you guys will enjoy this new little segment to my wrap-ups as well. So I'm going to do the statistics and graphs and things first, and then I'll get into the actual books I read and give me reviews and things like that for them. So let us get started. So in January, I read a total of 8 books, which altogether came to 2,983 pages. Of the books that I read, 63% were by female authors and 38% were by male authors. Of the books that I read, the vast majority were books published from 2000 and later, the second being books published from the 90s, and then I have some prior to 1940. That was actually only one book. Of the books that I read this month, 50% were fantasy, 13% were historical fiction, another 13% was science fiction, another 13% was steampunk, the next 13% was a non-fiction, and the last 13% was YA. Most of the books that I read were 300 pages or more. I did read one book that was within the 200 to 300 page range. I like big books and I cannot lie. Of the books that I read, I gave 5 books 4 stars, 2 books 3 stars, and 1 book 5 stars. Another little interesting thing that I'm going to put in, and then I'll keep track throughout mid-year, is that you can keep track of your TBR progress. So books that you had at your TBR beginning of the year, middle of the year, and the end of the year, and then you can factor in the books that you've purchased. So my TBR at the beginning of the year, this year, was 22 books. I ended up purchasing 13 books this month, though not all of them were books that I have not read. Some of them were actually books that I have read but I wanted to own. So that was kind of some of the statistics from January. I'm hoping to kind of streamline those things, this process of inserting graphs and things as the year goes on, but that was kind of what I have for January, and now I'll tell you guys what books that I read in January and what I thought of them. So the first book that I finished in January was A Shadow and Bone, the first book in the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. This is a young adult fantasy novel. I read it for the Book Hunters Book of the Month. This was my last month as one of the Book Hunters. The Grisha trilogy is sort of a kind of regurgitation of Russian culture with fantasy elements. This young girl finds out that she is one of the Grisha. This is somebody who has a certain power. She ends up getting thrust into a whole political and cultural part of her society that she's not familiar with to learn to harness her magic, and things ensue. There is some romantic elements. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was pretty good. I gave it a rating of 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really liked the story. I thought it was fairly original, which I enjoyed. I thought that there could have been a little bit more world building. There was, of the world building that we did have, it was very beautifully painted. I was able to picture it really well. But I enjoyed that. I did feel that there could have been more. I also felt that the Darkling and Lena could have been a little bit more well-developed, particularly the Darkling. The Darkling felt a little bit one-dimensional to me. But again, that could change in the later books. I've only read the first book. Overall, I thought it was a pretty entertaining book. I couldn't put it down. I really enjoyed reading it, but it wasn't fantastic. It was just pretty good, so hence the 3.5 out of 5 star rating. The next book that I read in January was The Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series. This book picks up pretty much exactly where Throne of Glass left off. Selena is now the King's Champion, and she is basically doing his will and assassinating people, etc. But certain things start creeping up. There's another creepy thing in the castle. Her relationship with Chaol continues to grow, and she ends up becoming thrown into the midst of a political uprising. And craziness ensues, and some very big twists and turns occur in this novel. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a marked improvement over Throne of Glass. Selena is definitely becoming a slightly more well-rounded character. In Throne of Glass, I didn't feel she was a very consistent character. I would say that was a little bit better in this book. I do wish that the romantic elements would kind of go away or at least become resolved. I'm tired of this romantic tension between Chaol, Prince Dorian, and herself, and it didn't really end up getting resolved at the end of the book, which I did not much care for. But I thought it was a big improvement over Throne of Glass. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the twists and the turns, and the ending was very good. I am intrigued enough to start an Heir of Fire. I don't know when. It will happen at some point, but for now, I'm content to just wait for it to come out in paperback. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would say if you were hesitant after reading Throne of Glass, it didn't quite meet your expectations, and I suggest you pick up Crown of Midnight because your opinion just might change. The next book I read in January was the first book in the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger, Soulless. This is a steampunk novel. It takes place in Victorian era England, obviously with steampunk and paranormal elements. It follows our main character, Alexia Terabati, who is a spinster, and not only is she a spinster, but she is also the daughter of an Italian scandalous who has since deceased, and she's also soulless, which means that she has the ability to negate creatures, vampires, and werewolves who have too much soul. She kind of negates their powers, if you will, but her family and most of her friends don't know that she is soulless. Pretty soon, some strange things start happening. People keep disappearing, vampires and werewolves, and Alexia kind of sets out to kind of see why, as well as pursuing a relationship with a certain Lord Macon, who is the alpha of the Wolsey pack and a member of the Bureau of our Natural Registry, somebody that keeps track making sure that vampires and werewolves are registered. Really good book. It's hilarious. It's my first steampunk novel and I really enjoyed it. It was just such a fun read. It was just, I don't know, it was just so funny and I really enjoyed it. It was fast paced. It read it pretty quickly and I highly recommend it. However, I would say that some of the things in this book are a little bit explicit and graphic, so if you are 18 or over, I would say you're okay, and if you're okay with that, I would say you're fine, but just younger readers, be warned. I really enjoyed this book. I thought the characters were well-rounded. I thought the plot was developed perfectly. I thought the writing was excellent, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I picked up in January was part of a buddy read with Michael from Bitten by Radioactive Book and Louisina from The Reading Glasses, as well as Giselle from Giselle Bradley and a few other great people. What we read was Alana, the first book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamara Pierce. This is actually a reread for me, but it's been literal years since I have read this series, so I cannot wait to get back into it. Alana follows a young girl, Alana of Trebon. Her and her brother Tom are to be sent off away from home. She is to be sent to become a lady in a sort of like a convent, while her brother is to be sent to become a knight. However, she wants to go to become a knight, and her brother wants to go and learn magic. So she cuts her hair, and as they're twins, they look alike when her hair is cut, and she goes off to become a knight, and he goes off to learn to become a sorcerer. So she hides as a boy, and she ends up becoming a page in the castle. This follows, I think it's like 4 years, so I think it's like from ages 9 to 13 or 14, and she just sort of starts to learn about becoming a knight. It's a really good book. It's really small. I really love this series. It starts as middle grade, but it ends as, I guess, what you would consider young adult, but these were written in the 80s, so it's not like your typical middle grade or young adult books written now. It's definitely a lot different, and I highly recommend it. The writing is excellent. It is just as good as I remember. A great book for young female readers. I read this when I was 15, and I swear to God, Alana was my role model when I was a teenager. I absolutely loved her. I highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out already. Great books, fast-paced, and wonderful. I left this at the 4 out of 5 star rating that I originally had it as. Next up was The Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This was another buddy read with some wonderful booktubers. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. You may remember that the first book, Assassin's Apprentice, was my favorite book of 2015. One of them. I absolutely love the series. This book was no different. We continued to follow Fitz as he and his role in the castle as the king's assassin, as well as dealing with certain political events happening, I guess, within court, particularly with his Uncle Regal. I absolutely love this book. I liked it just as much, if not a little bit more, than the first one. I would say some of the events were a little bit repetitive and a little bit slow, but it didn't really detract from my enjoyment of the book. Robin Hobb has this way of creating beautiful language. It really immerses you in the story and it makes you feel for the characters. She has this ability to give you super intense feeling when you're reading the book, and just makes you feel all of the emotions. I really enjoyed this book. All of the characters are so well developed and so well fleshed out. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Robin Hobb is continuing to exceed my expectations with books, and I cannot wait to read all of Robin Hobb's books. Seriously, I cannot wait. It's going to be so good. I love her so much, guys. Oh, book hug time, book hug time. The next book that I read in January was my nonfiction book of the month, and that was How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Cahill. Thomas Cahill was basically exploring how the Irish during the Middle Ages preserved a lot of the world's knowledge through scribing as well as other things. He explores it from the time of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire all the way through until about the 1000s. It's a really, really fascinating work. Thomas Cahill made a very enjoyable read. It was witty and engaging, and it kept my interest. It was really fascinating. I love Irish history and learning anything I can about Irish history. So learning how Irish monks contributed to our world history and preserving a lot of our knowledge was fascinating. Basically, if it had not been for them, because of a lot of the barbarian invasions and things going on in mainland Europe, we would have lost a lot of the Latin and Roman works that we have now because they were so intent upon scribing and learning as much as they could. It was really, really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I recommend it if you enjoy history, particularly Irish history. It was just a really fascinating read. The next book I read is another buddy read. It was the first book in the Imaginarium Geographica. It was Here There Be Dragons. This book was so fantastic. It completely exceeded my expectations. I did not know what to expect. I knew it was a middle grade novel and there were dragons involved somehow, but I didn't know how. This book basically follows 3 young men, John, Jack, and Charles. John soon learns that he is to become the new caretaker of the Imaginarium Geographica, which is basically this atlas that contains all of the maps to this other world that contains all of our stories and mythologies from our world. So in this world, Predane from the Predane Chronicles and Arthurian legend, Avalon, all these places exist just right next in a world right next to our own. And there are certain caretakers, these humans, that take care of these lands and take care of this Imaginarium Geographica. Well, soon John, Jack, and Charles are forced to leave to this land and to learn how to become caretakers, and they learn that they need to protect this world from the Winter King, who is hell-bent on destroying it. This book was really, really good. It was a little bit slow at times, but overall it was pretty fast-paced. There was just really, really engaging. It was really fun to see all of these literary and mythological figures that I have loved and known for years come to life in this book. And the twist at the end, I did not see coming. I mean, I should have. There were some clues leading up to it that I'm like, oh, I should have known that, but I didn't, and it was just so good. The ending is what sold me on this book. I absolutely enjoyed it and highly recommend you check it out. It's a really quick read. I mean, it's a middle grade book, and it's not very big, and it's full of really, really cool illustrations. This one is one of my favorites. I absolutely love it. Look at that. These like cross-hatching drawings are in here, and it's just fantastic. So I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. For a middle grade book, it was written very intelligently, and it pays wonderful homage to a lot of our literary figures, so I really recommend that you check this out. Excellent book. The last book that I read in January was Heart's Blood by Juliette Marillier. This is a standalone novel, and I quite enjoyed it. Juliette Marillier is the author of one of my favorite book series, the Seven Waters series, which features Daughter of the Forest. So I had to pick her up. I pretty much love everything that she has written. This book takes place also in Ireland during, I would say, it's probably about the it's after the English started coming in, so probably about the 1100s. It features Catherine, who is a young scribe. She is fleeing from her past, and she ends up at this place called Whistling Tor, this mysterious place full of paranormal and supernatural occurrences. She ends up becoming a scribe for the Annulin, who is the chieftain of this place. She ends up becoming entwined into the mysteries of this place and learning her place. It was really, really interesting. It was basically Juliette Marillier's retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So you have this weird castle where these weird people live here, and it was just really, really interesting. It wasn't as good as some of her other novels. I think that it moved a little bit slow and was a little bit repetitive. It could have been about 200 pages shorter, and it would have been a lot better. The end, though, is totally worth it for the end. I absolutely adored the end. I have to say Juliette Marillier is really, really good at endings. I really enjoyed the ending to this book. At times, I felt Catherine was a little bit of an annoying character. I felt that she didn't really always think things through, things that should have been obvious. So at times she was kind of annoying me, but I really like the atmosphere of the book. It definitely has some creepy feels. I love a lot of the secondary characters, these spirits that lived in the castle. I really, really enjoyed. It was a very intriguing story. So I say if you like Juliette Marillier and you like fairy tale retellings, then I think that you will enjoy this book. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I started in January but unfortunately did not finish was Bleak House by Charles Dickens. I will be finishing this book. I just got distracted by a bunch of other buddy reads, and then at the end of the month I didn't feel well. I was having my wisdom teeth out, so I didn't get as much read as I wanted to. I got about 215 pages into it. I'm really enjoying it. This is proving to be one of my others of Charles Dickens' favorite books. A lot of people kept mentioning that it was a little bit hard to follow, but so far I'm actually having a pretty easy time of keeping track of all the characters and how they're related to one another. I think in part because I read the Pickwick Papers, which was a lot more confusing than this one, I think. I think this one's definitely a lot more easy to follow. I'm really enjoying it so far and will be intending to finish this month. This is also part of my goal to finish reading all of Charles Dickens' major novels this year. I only have 12 to read, this being one of them. So this will be something I will be finishing in February. So those were the books that I read in January. So now I will show you guys some of the books that I'm hoping to start reading in February, because again, I have a lot of awesome buddy reads set up for this month. So the first book on my TBR for February is one that I've actually already finished, and that is Fuzzy Nation by John Scalzi. All I'm going to say is I absolutely adored this book, and I cannot wait to discuss it with my booktube friends on Sunday. Amazing book. But I'll get more into that when I do my February wrap-up. The next book that I am reading, also currently reading, is In the Hands of the Goddess by Tamara Pierce, the second book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet. Again, this picks up with Alana. I'm really enjoying rereading these books. This, I think, is one of my favorites because of Faithful / Pounce, which is a cat you see right here. So good. Next up is The Heir of Novron by Michael J. Sullivan. This is another reread for me, but I am reading it with a bunch of booktubers, including Lindsay and Sarah and Zana and Michael and stuff. They haven't read it, but I'm rereading it with them. I've already started it, and this is my favorite in the series, so I am very excited to reread it. Next up is going to be Changeless by Gail Carriger, the second book in the Parasol Protectorate series. I'm excited to continue on with this book series because I really enjoyed Soulless. This is just such a fun book series. Next up, and one that I am super excited for, but we're not starting it until the end of the month, is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, the third and final book in the Farseer trilogy. I cannot wait to read this, guys. I almost started reading it right after I finished Royal Assassin because I couldn't wait anymore and I wanted to see what was going to happen. So I definitely cannot wait. This is probably one of my most anticipated reads of this month. So excited. Next up is one that I'm reading myself, and is the first book in the Lost Years of Merlin series by T.A. Barron, and it is book 1, Merlin, The Lost Years. I love this series when I read it back in high school, and I want to reread them all. I don't actually think I ever read the last two. I think the last two might have come out after I had read the ones that were out at the time. And I love these new covers. They're all different colors, and feature a bunch of different cool designs, so I'm excited to read it. It's not very long, and I love me some Arthurian legends, people. I love them so much. The next book I intend to pick up this month, I don't intend to finish it. I just kind of want to peruse it at my leisure, and that is Everyday Life in Medieval Europe. I love history books like these that don't necessarily feature historical events, but actually the daily lives of the people who lived there and during the time. I got this one for Christmas, and I'm excited to get into it and read it because it just seems interesting, and I just, oh, this is full of so many cool pictures, and I love me some pictures. I do. Alright guys, that was my very long January wrap-up and February TBR. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books I have in this video and what your thoughts are on them and how your reading month went in January. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thank you guys so much for watching. So until next time guys, have a wonderful month and happy reading. Bye!